Hey there. You're up for getting down with low prices, right? Well, Kroger goes lower than low on food that's fresher than fresh. So when you're crushing on clementines, seeking a savory salad, or choosy about your chicken, just open the Kroger app. You'll get more ways to save on the fresh you love with personalized coupons, weekly sales, and rewards like fuel points. All for prices that are even lower than the everyday low. So go where you know it's lower than low. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Empire.
Welcome to Inside the Cap. I'm your host, Joel Corey. You can find me on Twitter at CoreyJoel, CorryJoel. And you can also find my regular CBSSports.com column called Agent's Take on Contract and Salary Cap Matters. This week we're going to discuss two things. One, how are players paid during the postseason, and also the whole DeShaun Watson trade talk. So let's start with playoff pay. Now, during the postseason, players are paid much differently than they are during the regular season. During the regular season, each player is essentially paid his base salary, 1/17 each week. That's what he gets each week. So that means that players who are making league minimum as rookies are getting $35,882 per week, because the league minimum salary is $610,000. All draft pick salaries are that. In the playoffs, at least in the first two rounds, players make less than that. For the wild card round, there's a split in how you're paid, whether you won your division or you didn't, if you participate in the wild card round. It's $30,000 for just a straight wild card team, $33,000 if you are someone who won the division. The teams with a bye have traditionally, under old CBAs, not gotten paid for the week. Now, under this CBA, they get paid like the division winners. But for 2020, because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the COVID-19 amendments, that money's not funded. That'd be for Kansas City and for Green Bay, teams with two byes. They'll get that money. It's deferred until 2024 is my understanding. Now, teams making $30,000 this week: Ravens, Browns, Colts, Bears, Buccaneers, Rams, $33,000 this week. Seahawks, Saints, Redskins, even though they have the worst record in the league, Titans, Steelers, Bills. Now, if you get past this round, next round, divisional playoffs, $32,000 for that game. Conference championship, $59,000 for participating in the conference championship. Super Bowl, the winner gets $130,000. Losers get $65,000. So the max a player can make during the playoffs, if you come from a division winner and win the Super Bowl, is $255,000. You win the Super Bowl as a wild card team, $250,000. Now, that means that a player like Russell Wilson, Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Donald, those guys had the biggest base salaries this year. And Wilson's was $18 million, Tannehill $17.5 million, Donald $17 million. So Aaron Donald was making $1 million per week during the regular season. Today, as a wild card team, $30,000, huge pay cut. Now, Russell Wilson making $1,058,824 per week. He's making the same thing as Geno Smith for this game. There's no distinction between starters and reserves. So that means everyone on the team gets the same, so it's very socialized in that respect. Now, for, let's say, the Saints win the Super Bowl, do you think Drew Brees is going to care about making $255,000? He wants to win the Super Bowl. That's what he cares about for his legacy. The money is secondary. Now, for someone who was undrafted this year, we'll say like Saints receiver Juwan Johnson, who was on the roster part of the season and practice squad part of the season. That money means a big deal to him. Obviously, he wants a ring, but he made during the regular season $345,176. $255,000 to him would be a big deal. Now, and also during the playoffs, eligibility differs on the rounds. If you're on the 53-man roster or injured reserve at game time in the wild card and divisional playoff games, you get paid. Practice squad players don't get playoff money. They get paid their weekly salary during the playoffs. So that's for the vets who wouldn't ordinarily be eligible for practice squad, but for the rule changes, that's $12,000. And for players who would typically be eligible for the practice squad, $8,400. It used to be that practice squad salaries were negotiable. That's changed under the CBA, so you don't have guys making the league minimum to be on a roster on the practice squad anymore. Now, once you get past the divisional playoffs, then it gets a lot more complicated on who gets paid and who doesn't get paid. For the conference championships and the Super Bowl, there's some players that get a full amount, some players get a half amount. Now, if you're on the 53-man roster when the game is played, or had been on that roster for at least three previous games, regular season and playoff games, get a full amount. Veterans who are put on injury reserve during the regular seasons that are still under contract when the game is played get the full amount. Veterans are 4 more years of service, they get put on injury reserve during the preseason that are still under contract when the game is played get the full amount. Players who aren't on the 53-man roster at game time that spent at least 8 games on the roster, regular season or playoffs, provided they're not under contract to another team in the same conference, get the full amount. Now, there aren't a whole lot of those guys who are going to fit in that situation. Ted Ginn is one of those guys. He was with the Bears for 8 games. Bears, long shot to get to the conference championship. But because of that, and he's unsigned right now, he would get full amount. He'd get the same as Khalil Mack. If the Bears get the conference championship, he's getting $59,000. They somehow get to the Super Bowl. Win or lose, it's either he's getting $130,000 or $65,000. Now, you've got players who get half amount. Now, that is guys who are on the 50-man roster when the game is played that have been on the roster for less than 3 previous games, regular season or playoffs. First-year players put on injury reserve during the playoffs that are still under contract when the game is played and signed a player contract or practice squad contract in a prior season, get a half amount. Players with 1 to 3 years of service put on injury reserve during the preseason that are still under contract when the game is played, also a half amount. And players who aren't on the 53-man roster at game time that spent between 3 and 7 games on the roster, that's regular season or playoffs, provided they're under contract to another team in the same conference, get a half amount. So, a guy like Damon Harrison can't double dip. Let's say Seattle gets to the conference championship or the Super Bowl. Because he's now a Green Bay Packer, he's not getting the Seattle money. He just gets throughout the playoffs whatever happens with Green Bay. Green Bay's got the bye, so if seeding holds up, he's going to be better off playoff money-wise than he would be for if he remained with Seattle. Now, there is a possibility to double dip and get paid by 2 teams during the playoffs. And I found this out years ago, representing a player, David Gibson, who was a defensive back for Tampa Bay, back when they won the Super Bowl. David got traded after, playing after week 4 to the Colts. Colts make the playoffs, so David gets the money for being the Colts. Full share because he's with the Colts. He actually ended up starting at safety because of injuries. And then, because the Bucs won the Super Bowl and he hit the 3 through 7 game requirement, he gets the half share. So he got to double dip. Now, there are a couple guys that could double dip this year. Luke Wilson's in an interesting case because he could get 2 half shares. Now, he played 7 games with Seattle, and he's now back on the practice squad. So that entitles him. This is a weird situation because he wouldn't otherwise be eligible for a practice squad. Now, the rules don't say anything about him being able to get practice squad money and the playoff share for those games. So I'd assume once you get to the conference championship, he's not getting his practice squad money. He's getting the higher amount, not both. But he was with the Ravens for 3 games. So he can get Ravens playoff money and also the half share once he gets conference championship for the Seahawks, even though he's still on a contract. B.J. Finney, another guy who gets a half share, Seahawks, if they get far enough. Was there for 7 weeks, then gets traded to the Bengals. Other conference, AFC, NFC, qualifies for getting money for not being on the team. Double dipper, potentially. Jake Kumaro. He's now on the New Orleans Saints roster. They claimed him off waivers when he was released by the Bills. He was with the Bills practice squad, was up for 6 games. So he can get half share from the Bills once they get the conference championship, and also collect playoff money from the Saints. Now, one thing that the CBA doesn't address is whether you can get money from 2 teams that are playing the Super Bowl simultaneously. Since it doesn't say you can't, I'm assuming you can. So let's say Kumaro gets to the Super Bowl with New Orleans and their opponent is the Bills. He's good. The way I'm reading it, he's good either way. Then for the Super Bowl game, let's say they win. He would get $130,000, and then he's getting $32,500 from the Bills for losing to them. So that's how I read it. That we'll see. That situation has never happened to my knowledge. So playoff pay, much different than regular season pay. Everybody gets the same thing, and there are certain different requirements to get paid once you get past the divisional playoff round.
You kind of like this guy, but when you can't decide between the Filet-O-Fish or the Big Mac, and he says,
I'll get you both.
Thank you.
You definitely like this guy meal. Get it at McDonald's when you get 2 of your faves for just $5.
Limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Single item at regular price.
Okay, let's turn our attention to DeShaun Watson. When Nick Caserio was hired as Texans GM, DeShaun Watson tweeted, "Some things never change," and before deleting it, which prompted speculation that he was going to ask for a trade, and then that kind of has taken a life on its own. Caserio has come out and said that Watson isn't going to be traded. I thought when it first started and started gaining traction that the whole thing on its face was absurd of trading DeShaun Watson. Let's see, guy's franchise quarterback. When was the last time a franchise quarterback signed a contract, several months later was traded? Watson signed a 4-year contract extension for $156 million, averaging $39 million per year, making him the second highest paid player in the league behind Patrick Mahomes. And what did he do this year? Completion percentage 70.2%, third in the league, led the league in passing yards, 4,823, second best passer rating, 112.4. So I tweeted something to the effect that there's a better chance of the Washington football team winning Super Bowl 55 than DeShaun Watson getting traded. And I still feel that way. Now, there's another obstacle before you get to any cap implications about a DeShaun Watson trade. There is language in DeShaun Watson's contract which makes that more complicated. He has no trade clause. So DeShaun Watson, when he negotiated his contract, so certain he wanted to be in Houston, he wanted to make sure they couldn't get rid of him if they wanted to. It says, clubs shall not be permitted to trade players' contract to any other club in the NFL during the 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, or 25 NFL league years without players' prior written consent. Yes, he could waive the no-trade clause. The intention was that he wasn't going to be traded. Now, should the Texans have first they invited him in to solicit input and then kind of ignored him, and he has, what I understand, a bigger beef for the fact that he got a glowing recommendation from Patrick Mahomes on Eric Bieniemy, and Eric Bieniemy has not been interviewed by the Texans. Now, this kind of underscores the difference between how NFL teams and NBA teams work. And for an NBA team, with your best player, like a LeBron James, have your franchise player. You make sure he is happy. You solicit his input on moves, and you don't do anything which is going to alienate him. Now, we saw this offseason with Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee. All their moves were for an audience of one, him, to make sure that he would sign the extension to remain in Milwaukee, which he did. And ignoring what a quarterback wants, a franchise quarterback, kind of seems like it's par for the course, even though you shouldn't. Just look at what happened with Green Bay this year in the draft. Did Aaron Rodgers want them to take Jordan Love? No, he wanted receiver help. So this kind of seems to happen in the NFL. But Cal McNair, the owner, has some mending offenses to do with DeShaun Watson, and Nick Caserio's first act is not going to want to be trading your franchise quarterback. Those are rare commodities, few and far between, hard to find. So you wouldn't get rid of him. Could DeShaun Watson force their hand and make it so they want to trade him? Yeah, possibly, but you don't give somebody a $27 million signing bonus and then go ahead and trade him before the next season starts. You did see that happen with Odell Beckham Jr. A couple of years ago. Giants signed to an extension. Then the next immediate offseason, traded him to the Cleveland Browns. But there had been some issues there with Odell Beckham Jr.'s behavior in New York, so just kind of weren't out as welcome. A little bit different situation, but he'd have to waive the no-trade clause. And no-trade clauses are not all that common in the NFL. You do have Drew Brees has one, Tom Brady has one, Russell Wilson has one, Larry Fitzgerald has one, which allowed DeAndre Hopkins to get one. And when I was looking at who might have no-trade clauses, I was surprised to find another one, a limited no-trade clause. Jimmy Garoppolo has a no-trade clause. In his contract, it's just for 1 year, though. It says, clubs shall not be permitted to trade players' contract to any other club in the NFL during the 2021 NFL League year without players' prior written consent. So there's been all this trade speculation about Jimmy Garoppolo not being in San Francisco. Well, if they want to trade him to New England, he's going to have to waive the no-trade clause. Now, they could put it to this way to Jimmy Garoppolo, and I'm digressing for a second, if it got to this. You know what? You don't want to get traded, we'll just cut you. So and maybe he didn't want him. Maybe he doesn't want to, wants to pick his own destination, but that's a whole different situation to keep an eye on. How would it work from a cap standpoint if you were to trade DeShaun Watson? Well, the Texans, when you have their top 51 allocated, which is what salary cap accounting takes into account during the offseason, and once you have the carryover room of almost $9.2 million factored in, they have they have a little over $190 million of cap commitment. So you'd have $21.6 million in dead money from the signing bonus proration versus a $15.94 million cap hit. So given we don't know exactly where the cap's going to be, could be as low as $175 million, which is the salary cap floor the NFL and NFLPA agreed to, or might stay flat in a best case scenario. Neither one of those would be ideal from a cap standpoint if you were talking about trading DeShaun Watson, just because then that's $5.66 million of an increase on the cap for the Texans because of his $15.94 million cap number. Then you got to go out and find a quarterback. That's not even getting to the standpoint that why would you get rid of a franchise quarterback, particularly one who is cost contained. Now, if you were a team looking to acquire him, you'd be licking your chops just from a contractual standpoint because there are 5 years left on his contract. They haven't even gotten into the new extension years for DeShaun Watson. So you got 5 years at $146.54 million, on his contract. So that averages $29.308 million. The guarantees run through the 2022 season. That's $84.52 million. The cap number next year, if you acquire him, the salary is $10.54, then it goes to $35, then to $37 the next year in 2020. Guarantees run through 2023, I should say. In 2023, then $32 million in 2024 and in 2025. That'd be great for you to want to acquire. And the reason people talk about the trade is the Texans don't have any picks this year. That their first they do start in the third round, but their first two picks belong to Miami because of the Laremy Tunsil trade. Now, what type of trade compensation would you be looking for should this thing continue to go sideways and Watson becomes further alienated? Well, you haven't seen a player of this magnitude be talked about in a trade. Now, I put out there that if I'm the Texans and we have to get to the point where we have to trade DeShaun Watson, I want 5 first-round picks, which is extremely high because I'm thinking along the lines of, this has got to be in the Herschel Walker territory when that trade, which basically built the Dallas Cowboys, when Herschel Walker was traded from the Cowboys to the Minnesota Vikings in 1989. That's what I would have been taught. That's where the 5 first-round picks came from. Now let's look at what happens in some of these big trades we've seen, because a quarterback's more valuable than the other position, hands down in the NFL. You don't have a quarterback, you have nothing. Now, we've seen non-quarterbacks in the past couple of years go for at least 2 first-round picks. We had Jalen Ramsey, 2 first-round picks and a 4th. We had Laremy Tunsil essentially go for 2 first-round picks and a 2nd. There are the players involved. There are players involved in the trade. And we had Khalil Mack go for 2 firsts, a 3rd, and a 6th, and then there's also coming back a 2nd and a 5th. So you're talking at least 2 first-round picks, another pick for non-quarterbacks. So what would a quarterback go for? So if I don't want to trade a guy, or if I'm trying to get a king's ransom, I'm setting the bar at 5 first-round picks. Do I think that would happen? Probably not. But I did ask someone that I immensely respect through Twitter, reached out to him through Twitter on direct message. Joe Banner, smartest guy I ever dealt with when I was an agent from team standpoint, who was the architect of the Eagles' great run, late 90s, early 2000s, when they kept going to the NFC Championship game and went to the Super Bowl, Howie Roseman's mentor. So I asked him about the compensation. I kind of posed him the question, would it be at least 4 first-round picks? And he was in line with that in terms of what he thought. He put, or maybe 2 first and 2 quality proven young starters. So you're talking multiple first-round picks, obviously. Let's say, by quality proven young starters, I'm taking that to mean your best 2 young starters who are potential all-pros for a quarterback. So he's kind of pegging it along the lines of 4 first-round picks, where I'm talking 5 would be the starting point for talking. But no matter what, it would be a trade of immense magnitude. Should it happen, which I really don't think it will, Texans are going to do everything they can at some point in the not too distant future, I would think, to make sure that they're in the good graces of their franchise quarterback. So that's going to wrap up this week's episode of Inside the Cap. Don't forget, you can find me on Twitter at Corey Joel, CORRY JOEL, and check out my CBSSports.com column, Agents Take. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next week, and goodbye.